Okay, so if you get into your Excel homework for this week, you're going to see a sheet down at the bottom, problem 2, and it's going to look just like this, asking for the frequency of level of preference for a new type of cereal. So Yum in the Tum, I sure wish there's a cereal that is called that, for 60 consumers. So this is in your homework, so I'm actually not going to go through this particular example, but it's also in your PowerPoint, and it's similar to one that is included in your book as well. But I did want to give you one more sort of walkthrough with another brief problem here or example. So on this sheet, I have come up with some quiz scores. So out of 25 students, they took a quiz. It looks like there were 20 points possible. I've gone ahead and created my range, so sorted them from smallest to largest. It looks like I have some that got the full points, some that did not do as well. So knowing that range is going to help me in determining my groups. So I am going to start by I think of my intervals in 3. So if I do that, 20 is going to be my top number, so I'm not going to have to do anything above that, but it will be 18 to 20. And then again, we'll just keep going down. Okay, so I've got my groups. And even though I don't have any 0 scores represented, I'm still going to include all of those intervals. And I now need to create my bins. And remember, we're going to pull that larger number from each of these intervals to include in our bin, or label it. Okay, so now that I have my bins, same number as I have of groups, I am going to get in and look at the frequencies. So I'm not going to give step by step. I'm going to hope that you are starting to get the hang of this here. And in my bins, I'm going to make sure to grab bins and not groups. And keeping my fingers crossed that my Control Shift Enter at the same time works. It did. Great. So when I'm looking at these frequencies, I always like to compare. So I know we have 0 frequencies here for these bottom 2 intervals. So if they earned 0 to 5 points, I shouldn't have any scores that are represented in that sort of interval there. So that is accurate. So you can kind of bounce back and forth and see if it lines up. I like to do that. And then we can go ahead and do a quick histogram. So again, I like to clear these out each time. I don't know if that means I'm not trusting of Excel or what, but actually. Okay, again, output range, this is just where I want to throw that histogram up there. And then cumulative percentage chart output, press OK. Great. So again, my bins, my groups are flopped, same thing with my frequency, but then you've got a nice visual here that you can compare. And that does line up with what I can see with my frequencies over here. So knowing that you have some freedom when you're creating your intervals, I wanted to play around with slightly different intervals for the same score. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste these quiz scores over here. And then for my groups, I think instead of intervals with 3 points in them, I think I want to think a little bit bigger, so 5. So if I break that down, even though my highest score is 20, if I go from 0 up with 5 in each interval, I'm actually going to need to do an interval from 20 to 24, because otherwise 20 won't be included. Therefore, those 2 high scores that I definitely want to have in there won't be included in the information that I'm seeing. So my first group, and I'm going to make sure that this is text, is going to actually be 20 to 24. So even though I don't have a 21, 22, 23, 24, I do have the score of 20 represented, so I need to make sure that that interval is included. Okay, now my bins. Okay, frequency. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this now. And my bins. Perfect, okay. Okay, so if you look at this information, and then this information, obviously I have fewer intervals here, but to some degree they should be similar in that I don't have any of those scores from 0 to 4 here. I have fewer as I move up. There's definitely sort of a peak towards the middle, and then I have fewer at the top. So even though I have fewer bins, I have fewer intervals, the data does look similar. So we should see that with the histogram as well. So we'll go ahead and add one of those. We want to do our output. I want it there. And we've got our two checked boxes. All right, so if we compare, again, we've got our flip-flop bins and frequencies, but if you look at it, yes, there are fewer intervals here, class intervals, but there is certainly a very similar shape between the two histograms. So it's kind of fun to play around with those different intervals. I think depending on what your purpose is, what you're looking for, then that may change, but it's kind of nice to play around with. So again, in your homework, for problem 1, you can feel free to throw in whatever data you want, or you can use exactly the data that comes from your book or something I tried here. That's fine. The purpose of this exercise is not to spend a lot of time, but really just to get in and start to feel comfortable with the options that you have within Excel. So have fun.